Okay, so I'm Itai from Dynamic. What I want to talk about today is essentially this thing that we're seeing in the market, which is called the crypto-enabled company. And I pretty much want to talk about two challenges that we're seeing as a result of that, of these types of startups that are coming up, and how to potentially solve those with account abstraction, right? So we'll talk about what we're seeing in the market and then how we potentially solve. So what we'll essentially dive into is first Dynamic in 60 seconds. I wouldn't be a founder if I don't shamelessly plug Dynamic for at least a couple of seconds on what we do. But then we'll talk about what we're actually seeing on a day-to-day basis and two challenges within that, which are new user onboarding and how to abstract away as much as possible, as well as interoperability, right? And how to think about kind of moving from a siloed wallet to a global wallet and that type of stuff. And we'll talk about the many, many other challenges that remain. And just like any other deck, it wouldn't end without some sort of positive note, so we'll get to that as well. But very quickly, Dynamic in 60 seconds, not gonna dwell over it, but at the very basic level, what we do is when you go into a site like Starkware's Token Drop or Maple or Longside and click login, that is powered by Dynamic. Whether you use kind of wallets or whether you generate an embedded wallet, whether it's with account abstraction or just a EOA, the very basic level, we kind of take care of your full authentication needs, which inherently means kind of like a Web3 version of Auth0, which means that we see companies very early in their life cycle as they think about user management, right? It's pretty much the first decision you make as a company. And as a result of that, we see some interesting challenges. And specifically what we're seeing is that the web is moving to a wallet-based world, right? So everything is inherently becoming a wallet, right? Every app that's thinking whether they're building a Web2 type experience is starting to think about this kind of financial transaction layer that is powered by wallets. Wallets are essentially the outlet for you to kind of do a decentralized Venmo or do a decentralized kind of gambling experience or a gaming experience or anything of that sort. So we're starting to see this really interesting trend of more and more companies trying to spin up embedded wallets within their flow. And specifically, there are a couple really interesting use cases that we're seeing daily, right? So we're seeing all these types of companies trying to abstract away crypto or move crypto to the back where the front kind of feels like a Web2 experience, but behind the scenes, there's this entire crypto layer. And so we're seeing this across RWA, whether it's Maple Finance or Ondo or Jasmine Energy that let you buy assets that previously you couldn't access without a wallet and just let you buy them very, very quickly. Whether it's treasuries, if you're someone who lives abroad and you want to kind of get exposure to US treasuries, you can buy that, right? Whether it's land or kind of energy assets, you should be able to buy that. You should not really care that it's tokenized crypto, right? So that's an experience that we're seeing. So we're also seeing stablecoin use cases, right? So the ability for me to send money from Argentina to Brazil in a very, very easy way. Again, crypto in the background, stablecoins in the background, but me, the Brazilian, or me, the Argentinian, should not really care, right? I just care about logging in and transferring money from point A to point B. Same with contractor payments globally, gaming, whether it's sports, if anyone's on Farcaster and has seen Bracket Game, so the ability to kind of bet on a team or own shares in a team, that's a fully crypto-backed or base experience, but powered by embedded wallets, right? So all these types of experiences that we're starting to see are these Web2 experiences with Web3 in the background. But that really creates this really interesting stack that we're starting to see all these companies that approach us talk about, which is the crypto-enabled stack. It's essentially a combination of auth, embedded wallets, account abstraction that I'll dive into in a second, double click on-ramps, off-ramps, L2s, swaps, and they essentially let you separate crypto functionality from crypto visibility, right? That is what we're starting to see. And we'll focus on account abstraction specifically and what role that plays. But really at the very basic level, we are seeing two challenges that these types of companies are facing. They're facing the challenge of how to onboard new users, right? And they're facing the challenge of once I've onboarded a new user, how do I kind of move beyond the siloed wallet that I've created for him into a global wallet, right? So at the very basic level, challenge number one is people just want to get to their magical moment, right? Developers that talk to us try to solve that with two inherent asks, right? The first ask is gasless transactions, right? They say, okay, I don't want to charge money in my wallet. They want to kind of abstract that away. And the second ask is an ask of session keys, meaning I don't want, and Derek alluded to this, I don't want to sign for every transaction. I just want to take an action and perform it, right? And what we're starting to see is this account abstraction layer in specifically 4337 really spin up as this really, really interesting policy engine, right? So the ability for you to dynamically, pun intended, say, you know, uh, for a $10 transaction or for a message, just let that through. But for a $5,000 transaction, pop up a passkey for approval, right? So the ability for you to kind of change policies based on your use case and do it in a way through account abstraction with session key is something that's really interesting that we're seeing more and more of. And specifically, if we dive in, we're seeing this really interesting trend in the market, which is folks are trying to place this policy engine. And again, it comes in the question of session keys or gas lists, but really they're asking about policies. They can kind of place it in multiple layers. And we see this really interesting tension, which is some folks kind of spin up an embedded wallet to do email social login and try to place the policy layer there, while others are placing session keys within account abstraction. And so one tension we're seeing in the market is account abstraction providers are offering these really interesting kind of additionally more complex session keys, which are inherently these policies, but developers aren't yet sure where that policy engine lives. And so that's one really interesting challenge that we're seeing for folks in the market that hopefully the market over time resolves. The second challenge is the challenge of interoperability, right? So we talked about, okay, I've onboarded my users. They never heard about crypto. They shouldn't care about crypto. But now I want to let them kind of connect with other sites, connect with other apps, create these really interesting experiences, right? And for some folks, they really don't care, right? So if I'm in that Argentina use case of Argentina to Brazil, I don't care about connecting to other apps. I just want to transfer money from me in Argentina to someone in Brazil in a very easy way. Or if I'm trying to access treasuries on Ondo Finance, I really don't care about connecting to other sites. I just care about buying an asset class that I didn't have access to before. So that's use case number one. But then we have use case number two, which are companies that are starting with spinning up kind of experience, but then saying, okay, let me hook it up to the ecosystem. Right? And that's where interoperability comes into play, where global wallets come into play. And what we're seeing in this market is, and by the way, shameless plug, I'm giving a talk that dives into this interoperability. I think on Friday, just show up on Friday, and sometimes you'll find me somewhere on one of the stages. So, you know, if you want to hear more about this topic, you can. But at the very basic level, what we're starting to see is kind of these different approaches for how to move the email social login that was created on site A into this kind of global experiences. What I want to do, how am I doing on time, by the way? I'm good? Okay, fair enough. So what I want to kind of show is three approaches for doing interoperability, two of which are off-chain approaches, so just at the EOA level, and one is kind of an account abstraction approach, just to show the tension of their multiple competing type of optionality here, right? So at the very basic level, what you can do, and again, shout out to Derek for actually building Wallet Connect. So you can use Wallet Connect for a lot of this stuff and essentially spin up an embedded wallet and let that embedded wallet through a QR code scanning act just like any other wallet, right? And use the embedded wallet that you spun up on site A to connect to any other third-party wallet, a Uniswap or a Magic Eden or anything of that sort via QR code scanning. Right, so that is kind of use case number one that we've seen in interoperability is actually not a single wallet, but rather every wallet can now connect to every other dApp through a Wallet Connect, right? So that's one instance of interoperability that we've seen. A second one, and we're seeing this now kind of play out live, is the Farcaster instance of you have a bunch of wallets, right? You might have your Solana wallet, you might have 3 MetaMask wallets, and you might have 5 embedded wallets. Right, but you have an identity hub, Farcaster, Lens, or anything of that sort that aggregates your different wallets into one identity, right? Farcaster just added Solana is the ability for you to kind of connect and claim, here are all my wallets, right? So a second way to do interoperability, a second way to move to global wallets is actually not to move to global wallets, but rather move to this interesting hub that serves as your identity hub for wallets. Right? So that is a completely different approach for how to think about global wallets that we're seeing kind of pick up as well. right? So those are two off-chain EOA type approaches. But then there's a third approach, and again, shameless plug, if you saw this is 6 and this is 2, there's 1 and 3 and 4 and 5, and maybe 7 if you come to the talk on Friday, I hope. So we can go into more details, but there's another option, which is interoperability with account abstraction. And what you can do here is this really interesting thing or concept of child accounts. And what we're seeing is essentially the ability for you to spin up email social login, right? Spin up an EOA layer, spin up an account abstraction layer for that specific siloed app. But then that account abstraction layer, that kind of wallet that you spun up for that use case, you can link it as a child, potentially, to kind of a branded account abstraction wallet, right? So let's say I open an account abstraction version of MetaMask that gets popular. That is my parent account. And I kind of link or attach and detach different embedded wallets and different sites to that main kind of hub, right? So that is a completely different approach that we're hearing folks talk through for how to, again, move from siloed wallets that we're all getting, spinning up on a day-to-day basis as we log into a bunch of sites into these global wallets, right? So that's a completely different approach, and that approach, essentially, you start with an embedded wallet, and you go through a flow of attaching it through some sort of flow to kind of a child, as a child to a parent wallet. You do some sort of scanning. 10 minutes. Oh, I'm good. I have plenty of time. Okay. Essentially, you can do some sort of scanning in order to attach to that kind of bigger kind of wallet, or detach it at any point, right? So that is a fully different approach to how to do that global wallet approach. And these are all valid options. Inherently, what will happen over the next couple months and years is you're going to see all of these prop up as different options, and we're going to have this massive competition around what is the right kind of take on global wallets, right? So we talked about some challenges, right? We talked about 2. There are many, many, many other challenges that remain in, what we talked about, which is the crypto-enabled company, that stack that abstracts away crypto, right? And I'll go through a couple. Given that I have a couple minutes, I can go through them in one more level of detail. But the very basic level is people kind of, first and foremost, is people still today, developers still today, confuse the concept of account abstraction with the concept of embedded wallets. They confuse the email social login with the policy engine that is embedded wallets, right? And so that is kind of one thing in the market that we need to solve, which is just developer education as to the main differences between the two, and that they're not necessarily competing, but rather they work together. So a lot of folks come in and say, I want account abstraction. They really mean I want some sort of MPC solution based on the kind of email and social login, right? So that's challenge number 1. Second challenge is, obviously, like a lot of folks talked about, kind of trustless assumptions and zero knowledge proofs and things of that sort. Some people do not care, right? And that's an interesting challenge, which is you can do all of this stuff on chain, you can do all of this stuff with account abstraction, but not necessarily is that a competitive advantage or an offer that developers care about. There are a lot of costs associated, there are gas costs associated with it. And so a second challenge that we're seeing within this crypto-enabled stack is some folks just don't use account abstraction at all and just try to do all of this off-chain, right? So that's a completely different challenge. The third one is that I know this is ETH Denver, but we do not live in an ETH-only world, right? There's Solana. I don't know if you've heard of it. No, I'm kidding. But essentially, there's Solana, there's Sui, there's Aptos. There are a bunch of really interesting solutions out there that aren't out of the realm of playing some sort of major role, right? One of the challenges of doing this on chain versus doing it at the EOA level, right, is that it's harder to actually support cross-chain apps. It's harder to spin up the way you do kind of session keys with Solana is PDAs, and it's a completely different approach versus the way you do session keys within EVM land. And even within EVM land, there are differences, obviously, within kind of non-EVM L2s like Starkware, where you have to take a completely different approach, right? So the challenges of doing it at the account abstraction level are you're limiting your ecosystem to a subset in a very fast-moving ecosystem. There are other topics. Obviously, everyone probably knows this, but account abstraction is a non-starter on L1s, right? So if you're starting to think about a multi-chain world where part of your solutions are based on just Ethereum proper, the gas fees will probably kill you, right? The last thing is a lot of and Derek mentioned this. There are a lot of really interesting companies out there like Zero Devs and Biconomy and obviously Wallet Connect that are working towards an alchemy. They're working towards this stuff, and there's a lot of competition on standards, right? So as the developer building, and again, grateful for the Wallet Connect team for kind of leading the charge on trying to standardize a lot of this stuff. There are a lot of kind of competing incentives for that at the end of the day, developers have to implement something that's a non-custodial implementation and kind of get stuck with it for the next 5 years. Right? So that is a huge challenge that we're going to see in the industry. And last but not least, and again, coming back to this point is, does this stuff actually matter to users, right? Some of this stuff that we talk about, the session keys, the abstraction, all the fun things that account abstraction could do have huge advantages. But some folks do not care. Some developers do not care, right? And so that's another challenge that we're seeing in the market, right? And with those, I will end with obviously the regular inspirational message, which is we can jointly make Web3 experience great. But in all seriousness, we are making progress on this, right? So we are starting to see, again, coming back to this crypto-enabled stack of entire companies being built that use crypto rails without a customer ever knowing that it's crypto. We're seeing this across RWA. We're seeing this across stablecoin finance. We're seeing this across gaming. All the examples that I mentioned and a lot more. And we're making really good progress towards supporting that at scale. And that's one of the really cool things about this stuff that's happening right now is that within the next year, within the next 2 years, I think there's going to be this massive number of companies that are going to just look like Web2 companies, but are going to have all the benefits of kind of crypto rails without end users knowing. And that is pretty much it. Oh, cool. Questions? Good chat. Going once, twice. Okay, if anyone wants to find me, again, shameless plug, my last name is my Telegram. So if you ever want to chat more, hold on, that is my last name. Just that's my Telegram. If you need anything at all, count me in. I'm around all week. Come to our booth, and that's all the plugs I can make for Dynamic within 20 minutes. So that's it. Thank you.